Atlanta.
Are you tired of political talk radio that would rather enrage than inform? Are you ready for a program that reflects both your interests and your values? Hello, I'm Charlie Levinson, lifelong Georgia resident and third-generation political activist, inviting you to a different kind of talk radio experience, the Progressive Weekly, on 106 Live Radio. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Progressive Weekly. I'm your host, Charlie Levinson, political correspondent for 106liveradio.com, where excitement meets diversity 24/7. And speaking of excitement, we have got a packed show for here today. We will be having as our very special guest, our first guest on this show, State Senator Michael Rhett, Democrat from Powder Springs. He's going to be talking with us about the recently concluded session of the Georgia legislature, what happened, what you need to know, and we will be joined as a co-host by the unflappable, unshakable, and thoroughly wonderful Dr. Cynthia Harper from our own C. Harper show right here on this network. We've got a great show for you today. Buckle up and let's get talking some politics. We'll be right back in a minute. This is the Progressive Weekly on 106liveradio.com. Please stand by. It's Friday, which means another edition of the Progressive Weekly, 106 Live Radio. Join us for amazing guests, stimulating panel discussions, and most importantly, your calls and questions at 404-464-8785. Join me, Charlie Levinson, lifelong Georgia resident and third-generation political activist, for an informative hour of political talk on 106 Live Radio. Welcome back to the Progressive Weekly right here on 106liveradio.com. We have with us State Senator Michael Rhett from Powder Springs. Dr. Rhett, thank you so much for being here. It's such an honor to have you as our first guest on the show.
Thanks for the invitation.
My pleasure. My pleasure. A little bit more about our distinguished guest. He was born in Harlem. Excelled at all sorts of sports, baseball, football, basketball, track and field. Later on, he found his calling in the United States Air Force, where he had a illustrious 33-year career. He received the United States Air Force Meritorious Service Medal, retired as a Master Sergeant, and specializing in career advancement for young recruits. He must have helped thousands of young airmen and airwomen find their way in life, and you're to be saluted for that. You've got an associate degree from the Community College of the United States Air Force in Administrative Management, a bachelor's degree in Communications and Afro-American Studies from the State University of New York, a bachelor's degree in business education from the University of Central Oklahoma, a master's degree in educational leadership from the University of Central Oklahoma, a specialist degree in educational leadership from Georgia State University, and a doctorate degree from the University of Georgia. Your first, Dr. Rhett was elected to the state Senate in 2014 to represent a portion of Cobb County. He is the first African American resident from Cobb County, Georgia, to be elected to the Georgia State Senate. And it says you are you are on the Senate Higher Education Committee, Finance Committee, Judiciary Committee, Voting Redistricting Committee, and Veterans, Military, and Homeland Committees. Senator Rhett, again, welcome. What should the people know about what happened in the Georgia legislature? What were some of the highlights?
Well, basically, you had a lot of discussion about voting and how that looks and how that might look going forward. Because, that's been a big deal, especially since what happened in the last election, which 2020. And the Republicans tried to address that in a way that we weren't completely on board with, but it will have a profound impact. And right now we're trying to do a lot of voter education to let people know what's going on. Like, for example, the drop boxes for your absentee ballots. Well, now you have to go all the way inside. So once you're inside, you might as well vote.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah. Also, there's a time limit for where you can ask for an application for an absentee ballot. And a lot of people are not aware of that. And so when you go back to 2021, there were a number of ballots that were frustrated because they weren't aware of that situation there. Also, when it comes down to the assembly can take over a voting precinct if they perceive that there's some problems there. But the question is, that can be relative.
Right. Who gets to say what a problem is? Is a problem an actual problem with the voting machines, or is the problem they don't like the voters in that particular precinct?
Because when the last election in 2020, when I saw that the only two polls left to count are Fulton County and I think it was Clayton, I was like, well, I know what this outcome's going to look like, right? Yeah. But if we had had this law in place, you can look at it. It kind of reminds me of the military when we had inspection. When the drill sergeant, when him or her came in and you stand at attention, if they had no gloves on their hand, then you're probably going to pass inspection. But if he or she pulled out a white glove and put it on, I don't care. You could have cleaned with Mr. Clean. They're going to find something. And I kind of use that analogy as to how this legislation can happen in a polling place.
Yeah, it seems to me that there's a lot of hypocrisy and double standards that went on with regards to the rules changes.
Also, there's one more thing I want to bring up, that now the GBI can be brought in to do investigations, which they already could, but now they just put a little more emphasis on that.
Okay. Yeah, it seems to me that a party that prides itself on local control seems to be seizing local control away from local election boards. So if the results are not to the state's liking, I'd also this is something you were heavily involved in, local county redistricting matters for county commission and school board. It used to be there was a lot of deference given to the local legislative delegations, but it seems that you were not given that deference this time around, particularly in Cobb and Gwinnett.
Well, what happens is at the state legislature, we usually will focus on drawing representatives and congressional and representative seats, state Senate seats. We try and leave deference, like you said, for local government entities to choose how they want to have their districts and representatives look like. And generally, whichever delegation has the lead Republican or Democrat,
Right.
pretty much have the final say in how that looks.
Mm-hmm.
But this time what happened in some cases, like in Cobb County,
Mm-hmm.
the Democrats were outnumbered the Republicans, and they proposed a map. Republicans didn't quite like the map, so they took the matter up and contested it at the state capitol.
Right.
And when you do that, you have more Republicans than Democrats.
Exactly.
So when you have an up and down vote, what happens is the majority rules.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of like we used to say in football, the old end run.
Mm-hmm. Right. But the hypocrisy element comes in because back in the early 90s, both shoes were on the other feet. The Cobb and Gwinnett legislative delegations were majority Republican, but the state legislature as a whole was majority Democratic. The Democrats at this time still allowed the legislative delegations in Cobb and Gwinnett to draw the maps to their liking. That same courtesy was not extended now that Democrats are in charge in Cobb and Gwinnett, but the state is now under Republican control. Let me ask you this. Several thousands of your constituents in southwestern Cobb County have now been placed in the congressional district of one Marjorie Taylor Greene, who really does not seem to reflect the interests or values of Southwest Cobb. Are you getting a lot of feedback from your constituents on that, on how they drew that congressional map?
That area of the county is primarily African American,
Mm-hmm.
business people, working class people.
Mm-hmm.
And there's quite a contrast in drawing her down and plugging her in there where they should have probably plugged her into Northwest Cobb,
Mm-hmm.
which has a different demographics,
Mm-hmm.
kind of similar, more similar to her.
Right.
And people are definitely not happy with that.
No, because it's. I think they've used the principle of stacking and cracking. What they'll do is they'll make certain districts super duper Democratic, and then they'll actually crack other Democratic areas and put them in an area where they cannot possibly hope to have be part of a governing majority. Marjorie Taylor Greene or whoever the Republicans nominate in that district, because she is opposed in the primary, is going to lose that portion of the county, that portion of Cobb County, 75 to 80% of the vote. But it's not going to matter unless the rest of that district, which has a strong Republican trend, starts to come around.
And that's frustrating to the voters.
Mm-hmm.
They come out in numbers and vote
Mm-hmm.
with strength, hoping that change will happen, but not realizing, as you said, the cards are stacked against them.
Mm-hmm.
Because their vote, they may come out 85%, 80% strong,
Mm-hmm.
but they're just a small part of the larger
Mm-hmm.
voting district. And we have to take time out in our town hall meetings to explain to them that process and not to get discouraged, because when you vote, it does matter whether it does, even if your candidate wins or loses, because politicians like myself, we look at voting patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times policies are made based on those voting patterns. If they see, I remember when I first got into politics or community advocacy, I would ask people when we would go down to a meeting, I said, what area do you live at? What address? And I would go and look up the address, look up the voting records. And I would say, well, if anybody asks you while we're down there protesting, don't tell them you live on this address. Tell them you live on this address here. Because the people on the address over here on the left, they vote consistently
Mm-hmm.
and vote in numbers. And you don't think politicians look at that? They do look at that. Compared to the other area on the right, where their voting record wasn't that good, was spotty. And politicians do look at that. Matter of fact, I can go to my phone and tell a lot about the voting history. You know, I've had people come to me and say, Doc, you know, I voted for you, man. I had your back. I go to my phone. I say, hey, they hadn't voted since Nixon. You know?
but there's, I mean, I that's you, as a political leader, you have to watch for things like that. But when it comes to the drawing of districts, and both parties are guilty of this, and if you do a state by state analysis, I'm just so tired of politicians choosing their voters rather than the voters choosing their politicians. It's backwards. And do you foresee any hope that the process itself can be changed so that we have fairer, compact districts that actually reflect the values? How do we take the raw politics out of the process?
That's a good question. Even in some states where they do supposedly have an independent,
there are workarounds. Yes, we see that.
there are still, who appoints who to those committees.
Exactly.
And it's something that we have to continue to try and strive for. But even the Supreme Court has said that redistricting is a partisan affair.
Yeah.
And they haven't really gotten involved in it unless there's an issue about the districts aren't carrying the same amount of numbers per district, or if it's based on race. So that's an ongoing quest that we'll always try to do. And there's probably going to be some influence, but we still got to work forward to at least trying to set up an independent, entity to try and be impartial when it comes to choosing these voting districts.
Let me throw out this idea. What if we passed a law that said a majority of both the Republican and Democratic caucuses have to be in favor of it in order for the bill to pass?
That sounds good, but but will it ever happen?
Probably not. It's probably a pipe dream. But what it would do, it would basically force the two parties into a room and say nothing's going to pass at all unless we find a map that gives us common ground. Dr. Harper, do you have any questions for Senator Rhett?
No, I don't. I've been watching this voting, this bill, and everything that's taking place. I don't have a great understanding of it. I do feel like there's so many pieces of it that are not justified. People are lost. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to express themselves. They do know that things have changed. The rules have, in the middle of the game, things have changed. Exactly when people had rallied themselves around the state of Georgia in particular. So people are confused. I'm confused of all the rules to this. Now, I do have a question for you, Senator. What is it, or can you do anything about this? Is it too late? Is what's set in stone? Is this what will be in terms of, voting and pre-voting and where you can stand, how long you can stand? You got to come in. You can't go out. You can't serve them food.
Well, we are working on that, and that's why we have these lawsuits in play to try and address these different bills. And sometimes when it looks like we're going to the well, and we're talking and talking, we're trying to get certain things on the record. So then if we go to a court case, we can point out the inequities when it comes to these different pieces of legislation. But I do want to encourage everybody, you see what can happen when people actually go out and vote. We got a Jewish U.S. senator, an African American U.S. senator. I remember the night of the election, Senator John Ossoff didn't have an election watch party, and later on that night he called me and said, "Doc, I think I'm in the runoff."
Yeah,
but it just shows you how important it is to go vote, and it can make change. Or look how close Stacey Abrams came.
Yes,
yeah,
she came that close. Now if each one of us would have talked to one of our relatives, Bubba or Pookie, and said, "Hey, if you would have voted, we got to come back out," it does make a difference, and people pay attention. And that's one of the reasons why they're trying to bring these different voting bills about, because they're like, wow, we sent everybody an absentee ballot 3 or 4 times, even the Secretary of State, and they actually used them. They almost won. So it does make a difference. And slowly, sometimes change doesn't happen overnight, but it's a process.
Yes.
And if we keep going out to vote and making our voice heard, then eventually things can change. Just like Georgia was the only state in the South that went blue. That's amazing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
The only state from Florida,
Yeah.
Tennessee, all the way to Texas, Georgia went blue.
Absolutely.
What were some of the things you accomplished during the legislative session? Bills you passed.
First, one of them the governor's going to sign is Senate Bill 87.
Mm-hmm.
And what that does is, on your state income tax, if you get a refund, you can donate a few dollars to support disabled veterans who attend the Georgia technical colleges. And it doesn't affect our tax base at all. And the second one, it has to deal with women breast health. I was working with Susan G. Komen because if you go get a mammogram and you have an issue, then you normally have to go and get something more invasive in terms of diagnostic, MRI, ultrasound, but it costs more money because now your insurance, you have to use your deductible, which can be $1,000 or more. And who has that money set aside? And then while you're waiting for it to, clear through your deductible, if you have an issue, it can spread. Well, now we've been able to pass that bill, which I sponsored, so that
For you.
so that now women can have those procedures as a part of their basic screening.
Right. We're coming up on our break, Dr. Rhett. How can people reach out to you? You are running for re-election. Where can people go to reach out to you and offer their support or suggestions?
Don't forget Dr. Rhett. You can go to drmichaelrhett.com, drmichaelrhett.com. And we'll be glad to hear from you. You can sign up for our newsletters and we'll keep you informed. And let's all get out there and make sure you're registered and go vote. Check your registration. Make sure it's correct because things have changed a bit.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here, Senator Rhett.
Sir.
Appreciate
My
your
pleasure.
time. We'll be right back on the Progressive Weekly. You've been hearing from State Senator Michael Doc Rhett, Democrat from Powder Springs, has served 4 terms in the state Senate and running for a 5th. We'll be right back. This is 106liveradio.com. Please stand by.
Broadcasting live from Atlanta while serving the entire globe. It's the fastest growing radio on the web. It's 106liveradio.com.
Hey, hon, what you doing with your phone? Taking pictures?
No, I'm asking it questions.
Like what?
Hey, Bobo, do flowers have best friends?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, follow me. I want to show you something. Look, flowers do have best friends.
Whoa.
Some answers can only be found in nature. Discover the unsearchable. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a trail near you. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
You went car shopping, you meant business. You ace vehicle history searches and test drives. You out-salesman to the salesman. Now you've got your wheels. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll have the info you need to get more for your future. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to speeding past financial challenges, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
To protect his home and family from disaster, Steve used courage, wisdom, and his camera phone.
That should do it.
Way to go, Steve! By simply taking digital pictures of his family's important documents, Steve can always have them stored safely online, no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Join me, Gavi, and Serena as we talk through everyday topics about life. You want to know what the Bible says about topics you've always had questions about? Listen in every first and third Sunday as we share what the Bible actually says on Life Talks with Gavi and Serena.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager, Learning the Lingo.
GOAT,
GOAT, acronym, stands for greatest of all time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Autism, a complex developmental condition affecting the patient's ability to interact, communicate, and progress, has not one, but many subtypes. Reach out to a local group to see how you can participate. This could range from fundraising to awareness walks while enjoying the spring weather. One way to bring awareness to this issue is to educate the new generation in fostering acceptance and kindness towards the autistic community. Ella Auti, a story of a fourth grader battling society with autism, is a great way to educate your kids and start important conversations. In light of the pandemic, the autism community continues to face the worst of challenges. Make it a goal to donate as much as you can to your local Autism Society of America to further their efforts and encourage their unrelenting support for their community. For more information, please visit nationaltoday.com.
Let's face it, times are still hard for many families. If you're among those struggling to put food on the table, there is no shame in asking for help, and that help is available. Sustaining Ministries Food Pantry, led by Pastor Brian Downing of Oakdale Church of God, has already given away tons of food and other necessities to families facing financial challenges. The location is 1631 Cooper Lake Road in Smyrna, and they are open Sundays from 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. Additionally, if you are in a position to donate supplies, your gift would mean so very much to families in need. Go to sustainingministries.com for more information. A public service announcement from the Progressive Weekly and 106liveradio.com.
Download the 106 Live Radio app from your Google Play Store. Or find us on the TuneIn app.
This is the Progressive Weekly with Charlie Levinson.
Welcome back to the Progressive Weekly right here on 106liveradio.com. Slight programming change to make. My very dear friend Bernard Tanner Jr. was supposed to be here. He got called away on personal business, but our special guest, State Senator Michael Rhett, is graciously agreed to stay with us for the second segment. And of course, we still have the pleasure of Dr. Cynthia Harper's company. Doc, you have a long career in the United States Air Force. Given your military background, what are your thoughts on the Russia-Ukraine war right now, particularly how the respective militaries have been performing?
Well, one thing we always say in the military, war is hell.
Yes.
And in this situation, it's not a good thing watching two entities just literally pulverize each other over an issue that, is still trying to figure out, was it really worth it? One of the things that you can see is that in the world now, we're so interconnected. You can catch a cold here in China and it can affect the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Or you have this war here and now it affects gas prices. Before I gassed up when I came down here, I stopped at the bank and took out a loan. So I could, But, it's just interesting how people don't think things out and go and just go to war, and it affects all of us.
Yes.
But when you look at it from a military standpoint or any standpoint, one of the things that the consequences may come from that is the acquisition or the maintenance of certain countries having nuclear weapons. If I remember correctly, Ukraine had some nuclear weapons, but gave them up.
Correct.
And now look what happens.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that North Korea said, hey, look at what happened to Gaddafi. Look what happened to Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to practice shooting
Right.
Man and the boys.
When you join the nuclear club, that changes the rules in a very, very profound way, and it really does limit the U.S. and NATO's strategic options as far as how we can intervene and try to stop the slaughter. Did you foresee the Russian military having so much difficulty, though? I mean, they had the manpower and equipment advantage, and yet here they are actually retreating from the Kiev region. I don't know if you had studied the old Soviet military. You served during the last few years of the Cold War. Is it surprising to you the lack of logistics and command and control that the Russian military seems to be facing?
No, it's not surprising because, I look at what happened with us in Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, Afghanistan, for example, the Russians went in there in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
They had to leave eventually. We went in there, our longest war, and we had to leave. And when you talk about the style of attack that these countries use, you may get in there, but then in terms of trying to maintain, people from the other sides are providing ammunition, just like in Afghanistan when they had those Stinger missiles shooting down the Russian planes.
Yeah.
Whereas when we were over there, you had those landmines. So it's not surprising.
Okay.
You got.
Charlie, I want to ask you something. You said that how we could help. My question is, why aren't we helping? This is from a person who don't know.
Okay.
Why aren't we helping?
Here's my understanding, Dr. Harper. We are obviously rooting for Ukraine, but Ukraine is not a NATO member. We are not treaty obligated to intervene. Now, if Putin decided to roll into Poland through Belarus, then we're at war because we are treaty obligated to defend Poland. Poland is a NATO member. Ukraine is not. They were applying for NATO membership, but Putin still has one or two friends in NATO, and it has to be a unanimous vote in order to include another NATO member. So really and truly, the justification Putin had for starting this, namely to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO, was a complete smokescreen. Putin was already using primarily the recently reelected Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, as a veto to prevent Ukraine from joining in the first place. Ukraine was not going to join NATO because Putin already had a quiet veto in his back pocket in the person of Prime Minister Orban of Hungary. What this war is really about is about resource control. Putin had already lost the political and social and economic argument in Ukraine. Ukraine was turning westward. They wanted to be a part of NATO. They wanted to be a part of the European Union. And their vast energy and agricultural output was going to be merging with the Western trading bloc and not turning eastward back towards Russia and basically the sphere of the former Soviet Union. And he could not deal with that defeat. There is no greater Russian empire in Putin's mind without Ukraine. So he whipped up all this nonsense about Nazis running Ukraine. Absolutely ridiculous. President Zelensky is Jewish. And other such anti-American histrionics. And he started a war that he believed he could win easily. And even some of our analysts believe, going to what we were just talking about, believed Russia would win easily based on their superior military firepower. It turns out that their firepower wasn't nearly as strong as they thought. They got totally bogged down. They're now having to retreat from Kiev, and basically they've limited their military objective to the land bridge between the separatist regions, that are still pro-Russia, and the Crimea, which Putin had annexed illegally in 2014. Will they be able to accomplish even that? Hopefully not. But a lot of innocent people are dying as a result. We are seeing day after day after day. Just today, a Russian missile struck a train depot in the eastern part of Ukraine, a train depot that was a vital link in getting people out of the worst of the fighting. When you see the carnage that the Russians are wreaking, and it's pretty much one-sided. Other than attacking one fuel depot inside Russia, Ukraine has not been taking the fight to Russia. This is Russia invading Ukraine. This is Russia being a bully. This is Russia refusing to accept that this is the 21st century, not the 20th, and the Russian Empire, whether you want to call it a Tsarist empire or the communists, is dead, gone, and it's not coming back.
It also gives them an opportunity to try out some of these new weapons like that hypersonic missile.
Exactly.
And he's also good friends with Donald Trump.
Yes. Yes. And when you look at the few Republican Congress members who have been voting against tougher sanctions and against these statements of condemnation, the ones who vote against are almost always the ones who are strongest in support of former President Trump.
Well, one thing I want to go back to before the break, we were talking about a bill I worked on.
Yes.
Pertaining to women's health, women's breast cancer.
Yes, let's get back to that.
And I think Doc and I were talking off the air, and you mind?
No, I was just saying that there seems to be a pattern when African American women, since you worked on this bill, just to share this with you, when we go for breast exams and treatments, there's always extended requests for us to come back and go through more procedural things than other brown women, than other red women, and other Caucasian women. They tend to think because of the density in our breast mass is that we come back over and over again. Now, you made a statement of something that I wasn't aware of. You said that because we don't have the finances to further the long-term treatments and to figure out that there is an issue there, that a lot of women, Black women, are struggling with this breast issue problem. But there seems to be an overwhelmingly request for us to be treated and retreated. And I don't know if I believe, because we've had such, my heart doesn't trust everything that we've been told medically. It doesn't mean that it's not true just because I don't trust it. But the truth of the matter is I am concerned that every time I go, that I'm going to be given a scare, come back, there's something not safe about what we see.
I can kind of relate to that. I remember one time I was in the Air Force, I went to my private doctor and got an annual physical. And when it came back, it showed my prostate number was sky high. So then I went to the Air Force and got my exam and found out it was okay, that somebody misread the data. But when they first told me my numbers, I was like Fred Sanford. Here I come, Elizabeth. With a bad prostate.
Coming to get you, huh?
And I think we were relating how that call to come back, how it makes you feel.
Oh, it's the scariest thing. I mean, anytime you use the C word for anything, for any of us, male, female, children, it is a very, it dominates your whole being for the second that you hear it. And when women are dealing with breast checks and you hear there could possibly be something there, the first thing you think is cancer. But we've got to change that mentality. Two, we need people to work on those bills so that we can be treated equitable, so that we're not left out. How did you get to work on a bill of such? How was that brought to you? Is that through, where does that come from? How does that stem?
Well, before I joined the Georgia Senate, I worked with women over at the City of Refuge.
Oh, yeah.
It's a women's shelter. I've helped women battered, abused, or homeless. And I had a program to try and help them make a paradigm shift in their life. So I was responsible for helping them get health checkups for them and their children, how to use the computer, get a job hunt, et cetera, et cetera. And from a number of times, the breast exam and the follow-up treatments would come up. And so being in that position, I was able to be more sensitive somewhat to their needs. And so I saw that cost was an inhibiting factor where it shouldn't be. When you talk about good health, one of the things we found in the Air Force is that good health equates to the success of the mission. When we first called people up for the first Gulf War, a lot of people didn't have dentists or doctors. So before we could send them off to war, we had to take them to the dentist or the doctor to get their health together. It's kind of hard to shoot straight when your teeth are hurting. But now that women are women are empowered and they're going through the glass ceiling, we also want to make sure they have good health and access to good health to follow them as they move along. Because good health, as I said, is, has a direct impact on the mission.
Then, Charlie, I guess my question for you to pose to the people, has affordable health care helped rectify some of these issues?
I don't see how it couldn't. How it couldn't, but we passed Obamacare and there it stopped, and we have not been able to take the next step. I don't think even former President Obama would say, okay, this is it. This is all we have to do on healthcare. The intention was always to take that next step. Indeed, in the Affordable Health Care Act that was passed by the House included what was called a public option. It allowed the people to form a government-sponsored insurance pool where they could access healthcare services at an equitable rate. The Senate would not pass that. It was filibustered. There was a majority of the Senate, but they couldn't clear the 60-vote threshold, and the public option was left out.
The insurance companies don't like that because that's competition.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. Well,
the public option.
We couldn't get it through, and since then, the political stars have simply not been in alignment, certainly in Washington, to revisit that issue, much as it needs to be. And then, of course, you have the other option, which is totally scrap private health insurance altogether and go to a Canadian or British model healthcare where it's called single payer. The government pays all of the premiums,
which would be so much better.
Well, if you look at Canada, their healthcare outcomes are better, and their per capita healthcare costs are 40% lower. But you also have the stories of waiting periods and limitations on services, and while they might be anecdotal rather than scientific, those anecdotes have a lot of political sway, and a lot of people fall for them. And that's a problem.
This week, a physician told a friend of mine, "Oh, you have Oscar, so that's a part of the affordable health care plan." I hate Oscar. I'm not a fan of it. And you might want to be better off getting you another physician. In other words, I really don't want to treat you because this is affordable health care, and it's not going to give me the maximum that I would make if you had another private health care. And I told her, switch doctors now. Yeah. He's not going to treat you fair.
Right, right. Because if he's looking at reimbursement rates, he's certainly not looking at the needs of the patient.
And she has a history of medical things that she was taking care of. I said, you're not going to be treated well. So you might as well switch now. Because it's people like that who keep affordable health care in a pothole where it's not valued. But if you decided that it is something that we can adopt like they do in other countries, it would be fair and equitable for everyone, and we all got the same treatment across the board. But so many people want to be superior. They want to be on a Maslow hierarchy of better than. And until we break these mentalities, which is part of the struggle, but it's happening. Yesterday was evident of that.
Yes.
But we've got to break that mentality. Or not, we will have people treated like second-rate citizens.
Right. Right. And that's what we have right now. I mean, you look at healthcare disparities, that you can thread that in with disparities in law enforcement, disparities in job opportunities, disparities in voting rights. And it comes back to race.
It
And
does.
it comes back to what I have said before and will continue to say until I'm blue in the face, or bluer anyway. Racism in America is not a symmetrical phenomenon. It never has been. This is Caucasians institutionally attacking non-Caucasians. That's what racism is about. And if you want to call that critical race theory and get your feelings all hurt, too bad, because that's history, that's fact. And if history and facts are getting your feelings hurt, then maybe you need to re-examine your feelings, because history and facts don't change.
It's interesting you mentioned CRT, critical race theory, and they passed a bill in the legislature where don't say gay. If your kids are in kindergarten, first, second, I think third, you can't use that word. I remember, I'm also a retired educator.
Yes,
I can
yes.
tell you that. And I remember we had the kids, we had spring break or something. They came, I said, okay, what you do, little Charlie, for spring break? Or what you do, Doc? Then one kid said, well, me and my two daddies went to the amusement park. And I said, okay. Now with this bill, how do you handle that if you're a teacher?
Absolutely.
You're in third grade. And so it's made it pretty tough on recruiting teachers.
It's
a lot of teachers not going into, because now you're micromanaging.
See, what they're calling critical race theory is nothing but diversity, equity, and inclusion. Truth of the matter is, when these things started back in the 60s, it wasn't about the LGBTQIA community. They weren't even considered. It was about the desegregation of Caucasian white men. White women could vote. Okay, so, and they were accepted. Black women had just began to vote. But this was about keeping white men in a superior position.
Right.
That's what it's always been about.
Exactly.
They don't even care if their wives are not in there. They could care less. It's a sad scenario. Now you've got a whole nother agenda going on. You think they have something to deal with? These little bills they're passing and all this stuff, which is really taking away all the power of people. You wait to see what's going to happen with all this gender stuff and what's going on.
And it's going back to what I was saying about the redistricting. Politicians on that side of the aisle like to talk about local control, but when you have local agendas that don't conform, they're all of a sudden it's time for the big hand to step in.
But it puts the teachers in a
terrible
situation, because I remember two kids, third graders, playing. They got mad. I was like, what y'all mad about? Well, he called me gay, so I tried to play it off. Well, in my day, gay was, you had a good time.
It was jolly, happy, yes.
But if you're a teacher, how do you in the minefield? Because if you try and play it off like I did, now you're talking about it.
We'll be
now
right.
You're in trouble.
We'll be right back with a few more minutes of the Progressive Weekly on 106liveradio.com. Please stand by.
Broadcasting live from Atlanta while serving the entire globe. It's the fastest growing radio on the web. It's 106liveradio.com.
Hey, hon, what you doing with your phone? Taking pictures?
No, I'm asking it questions.
Like what?
Hey, Bobo, do flowers have best friends?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, follow me. I want to show you something. Look, flowers do have best friends.
Whoa.
Some answers can only be found in nature. Discover the unsearchable. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a trail near you. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
You went car shopping? You meant business. You ace vehicle history searches and test drives. You out-salesman the salesman. Now you've got your wheels. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll have the info you need to get more for your future. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to speeding past financial challenges, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Your protect his home and family from disaster, Steve used courage, wisdom, and his camera phone.
That should do it.
Way to go, Steve! By simply taking digital pictures of his family's important documents, Steve can always have them stored safely online, no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Join me, Gavi, and Serena as we talk through everyday topics about life. You want to know what the Bible says about topics you've always had questions about? Listen in every first and third Sunday as we share what the Bible actually says on Life Talks with Gavi and Serena.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
GOAT, G-O-A-T, acronym, stands for Greatest of All Time. As in, spaghetti sandwiches for dinner? They're my fave. Dad, you're the GOAT.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
Autism, a complex developmental condition affecting the patient's ability to interact, communicate, and progress, has not one, but many subtypes. Reach out to a local group to see how you can participate. This could range from fundraising to awareness walks while enjoying the spring weather. One way to bring awareness to this issue is to educate the new generation in fostering acceptance and kindness towards the autistic community. Ella Auti, a story of a fourth grader battling society with autism, is a great way to educate your kids and start important conversations. In light of the pandemic, the autism community continues to face the worst of challenges. Make it a goal to donate as much as you can to your local Autism Society of America to further their efforts and encourage their unrelenting support for their community. For more information, please visit nationaltoday.com.
Are you thinking of changing your marketing strategy? 106 Live Radio is the solution you need to promote your goods and services. For a limited time only, we are offering special advertising rates on our fast-growing radio network. We can also help you create an audio commercial or a website banner that fits your business needs. It is just that simple. Visit our website at 106liveradio.com for details.
Bringing you the best shows and music 24/7 on your favorite radio. It's 106liveradio.com.
Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and be sure to tell everyone else,
ladies and gentlemen,
about 106liveradio.com.
This is the Progressive Weekly with Charlie Levinson.
Progressive Weekly. Got a couple of comments here. NVK13.
When I was talking about the two young boys when they were in elementary school and one called the other gay, and I was trying to smooth it out. If you're a teacher nowadays, you can get in serious trouble when all you're doing is just being a teacher, trying to explain, well, we all are different shades of the rainbow. We all have different orientations, but we're all human beings. You can get in trouble and lose your job and your license, maybe. That's the sad part about it. And it has an effect on the quality of teachers we have or able to maintain.
Okay. A couple of comments. NVK13, love this program. Keep teaching. We will do our best, NVK. Favor miracles. The Black community at large is always treated poorly, especially the women in the health community. That's a sad truth, and there's no denying it. And we as a society have a responsibility to change that. During the break, Doc, we were also talking about your ability to pass bills in the Georgia legislature, even as a Democrat in a majority Republican body. Go more into that detail and work that into why people should reelect you in Senate District 33.
Well, I'm blessed to be able to get things done. A number of bills I'm able to sign that are good practical bills, supported by both sides of the aisle in both chambers. And it's not easy for people to do that. You know, when you look at the amount of bills that I've been able to get signed by the governor compared to the other members in my delegation, if you combine their bills, I still have more bills than them combined. And that's because I value the interchange with people. One of the things I used to do in the Air Force, I learned in the Air Force, I used to supervise and work with people from different backgrounds. I remember I had a number of guys love NASCAR. I didn't understand what was so, interesting in watching cars go in a circle. But because I was their supervisor, I went down to the track with them. They needed us, the Air Force, to volunteer, and I got hooked. But so what I would do is I'd watch ESPN and watch the race and then come in and talk with them. And that built the foundation. Or my last duty station, they promoted me to master sergeant. And they said, well, we just need you to supervise a few people. So I walked in there and they were all in their 20s and they all happened to be women. So I read magazines like Cosmopolitan, Essence. I even read part of the Feminine Mystique.
Wow.
And because it's important to, as they say when I was stationed in Oklahoma, to walk in other people's moccasins in order to get them to be able to work together. And what I do is I used to be a salesman, is I'll read the paper every morning and I'll go to the Senate and talk with 5 different people. And I go across the chamber to the House and just start talking with 5 different people about current events.
And that's how you get things done for your constituents.
You build up that rapport. So at least now you have someone you can talk with.
Yes. All right.
It's not that posture always of me, us versus them, or them versus us.
Exactly. Working together, politics at its best. And that's what I think defines you, Senator. And thank you again so much for being on this show and for sharing your views with us. We have come to the end of another show of the Progressive Weekly right here on 106liveradio.com. Thank you again, Senator Rhett. Thank you, Dr. Harper.
Thank you,
for being here, for being a part of this discussion. And we will be back next week, Fridays at 3, right here on 106liveradio.com.
Don't forget Senator Rhett.
And we will see you next week. Be safe, be prosperous, and have fun this weekend.
Thank you all. I appreciate that. No sense.
You come again, you need to explain to people the difference.
We're coming to the end of another great show here at the Progressive Week. Remember, your opinion, your voice, your interests matter, but they only matter to the extent you make them known. The power is within you to bring positive change to the world for yourself and those around you. Always remember,